Very loser. I am sort of a loser. Pages numbered by Jim Smith. Super loser. I've always wanted to be a superhero like my favorite TV star, future rat boy. That's why I've started calling myself Super Loser. Practicing my flying. Super Loser's catchphrase is keel, which is what future rat boy says instead of cool. My superpower is loserkeelness, which is where I'm always coming up with brilliant and amazing ideas. Like the time my mum said she never had any surprises, so I hid in the airing cupboard dressed as a burglar and jumped out when she walked past. Loserkeelness is also where you accidentally tread in a dog poo, or turn the wart on your thumb into a remote control for yourself or something like that, and all your friends laugh and think you're really loserkeel. Everyone at school knows I'm the loserkeelest person ever. So imagine how annoying it was when Faye Snoggles came in one day acting even more loserkeel than me. Faye Snoggles. What's that white plastic board thingy hanging round your neck? Said Sharonella, as Faye walked through the classroom door with a white plastic board hanging round her neck. Faye pulled a big red marker pen out of her pocket and plopped the lid off. Got sore throat, she wrote on the board. Hurt to speak. This is Faye in case you didn't know. She wiped the board clean with a tissue and blew her nose like an elephant, leaving a red pen smudge on the end of her nose, and everyone laughed, apart from me. Oh my days, Faye, you are making me laugh, snorted Sharonella, who's been fake best friends with Faye ever since her real best friends Donatella and Tracy fell out with her for copying the way they draw dogs. Isn't this the sort of loserish thing you do, Barry? Burped Darren Darrenofsky, swinging Faye's board round and almost slicing the red bit off her nose. He flumped over his desk and poked me in the ear hole with his fat little finger. Yeah, except I'd do it 1,000,000 times more loserkeely, I said, pretending I wasn't bothered. I looked out the window at all the wind that was blowing, not that you can actually see wind even if you're a super loser like me. What wind looks like. A poster saying you could be class captain blew across the playground, and I remembered our teacher Miss Spivak saying the elections for class captain were coming up. You could be class captain? That poster was just talking about what you gonna do, Barry? Faye's compierly copying your loserkeelness, said Bunky, who's sort of like my sidekick. He poked his finger into my other ear hole, and I bonked him on the nose for being such a naughty best friendapuz. Because of all the fingers in my ears I couldn't really hear anything, apart from what I was thinking. Bunky's right, super loser. Faye's completely copying your loserkeelness, said the voice inside my head, and I imagined it coming out of a tiny little mini berry, sitting on my brain like it was a sofa. Yeah, super loser, you've got to come up with one of your brilliant and amaze-keel ideas, said another mini berry, and I nodded my head, imagining the mini berries falling off their brain sofa because of all the nodding was doing. Listening to your mini berries, are you? Said Nancy Verkenwerken's voice all of a sudden. I was just about to tell her to get out of my head, when I realized she'd pulled Darren and Bunky's fingers out of my ear holes and was speaking into my actual ear with her real-life mouth. Looks like you've got some competition, doesn't it? She smiled, pointing over at Faye, who was blowing her nose again, this time like a warthog. That's the annoying thing about Nancy, she can always tell what I'm thinking. Oh yeah, like I'm really bothered, I said, leaning back in my chair just enough to fall over. Arrgggh, screamed, waggling my arms around like the loserkeelest super loser ever. But nobody noticed, because they were all too busy laughing at Faye. Verbunkenloser whatever boxes. Verbunkenloser Ltd is me, Bunky and Nancy's new company. It only sells one thing at the moment, but in the future it's gonna be bigger than Fico's supermarkets. Roll up, get your Verbunkenloser whatever boxes here. Only a few left, shouted Nancy from behind the table tennis table in the playground, which is where we set up our pyramid of whatever boxes every lunchtime. When I first came up with the idea of selling old cereal boxes filled with whatever rubbish we had lying around, I wasn't sure anyone would buy them. But it's turned out to be a big hit, mainly thanks to Nancy. Asterisk only one thank, though. Ooh, me. Me, squeaked Jocelyn Twiggs, handing Nancy the dirtiest, bent-in-halfest coin ever and taking a box off the top of the pyramid. It was a Fico's cereal packet painted light blue, with the word whatever scribbled on it in black felt-tip pen. He ripped the lid off, stuck his hand inside and pulled out a worm. A real-life worm. Just what I've always wanted, he grinned. And it doubles up nicely as a bracelet, said Nancy, curling it round Jocelyn's wrist. Jocelyn did a face like he didn't know what was more funny, having a worm curled round your wrist or wearing a bracelet. Then he shrugged and bounced off, and I wondered if the worm was thinking it was all a bit funny too. Gordon smugly glided over and picked up a box, and the pyramid swayed. Good weight, interesting rattle. I'll take it, he said, putting a coin into my hand, and I popped it into the plastic Fico's ice cream tub, which is where we keep all our money. Is that the one? Whispered Bunky, and I snortle nodded even though I wasn't really in a snortle nodding sort of mood, what with Faye Compierly copying my loserkeelness and everything. Gordon slid his finger along the top of the box and opened the flap. Raisins, he smiled, grabbing a handful of tiny, brownish, dried-up, bobbly balls and opening his disgusting mouth. Yeah, my nostril raisins. Bunky laughed. EURGGGHHHYYUCK, screamed Gordon, throwing the bogies into the air, and they swirled off in the wind like tiny planets. Ha ha, nice one Bunky, he said, not wanting to look stupid, and he walked away with his box of bogey raisins still rattling. Nancy turned round and gave us one of her looks. If we're going to make a success of Verbunkenloser Ltd., we cannot afford to annoy our customers, she said, tidying up the pyramid. Another poster saying you could be class captain, blew in front of my eyes like a magician's cape. Sharonella and Faye appeared from behind it and I did a little blow-off out of shock and annoyedness. WHAHVA, said Sharonella, reading the box she'd picked up. What's inside? Not that I'm bothered. You never know with a Verbunkenloser whatever box, smiled Nancy like she was on TV. But everyone's a winner. Ooh, random. Go on Faye, you can't lose, said Sharonella, nudging Faye forwards, and I looked at the pyramid of whatever boxes swaying in the wind and came up with one of my brilliant and amaze-keel ideas right there and Deanie then on the spot. Me coming up with one of my ideas. Faye pulled her pen out and plopped the lid off. One please, she wrote, sliding a coin towards Bunky and picking up a box. She opened the lid and peered inside. Rua bish, moaned Sharonella, as Faye's hand pulled out a smelly old hair clip with a faded plastic goldfish perched on it that I'd found down a drain. I stepped forwards and got ready to play at loser keel. Woohoo! Faye is a winner, everyone! I shouted, pretending to trip on a piece of gravel and fall towards the pyramid of whatever boxes. Argrg! I'm so 0000000 loserkeel. I screamed, crashing into them. Light blue boxes flew into the air like rectangle chunks of sky and my nose thudded onto the floor, me following behind it. That is so you, Barry, laughed Sharonella as I lay on the ground covered in whatever boxes, and I breathed a sigh of relief, because was back to being the loserkeelest person in my class. The end. Not really. Mogden poo. It felt good being the most loser-keel person in my class again, and to celebrate I'd come up with another one of my brilliant and amaze-keel ideas. It was the next day and we were in the school coach on the way to Mogden poo. Mogden poo is our town's swimming pool, except the L from the sign disappeared one night 8 million years ago and no one ever found it. Trunks wrapped in towel like a sandwich. Don't forget, aim them right for my nose. I whispered into Bunky's ear as we jumped out of the coach and ran into the changing rooms, Darren Darrenofsky blowing off with excitement behind us. One of the cool things about the changing rooms at Mogden Poo is that the girls and boys are right next to each other with a wall in between that doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling, so you can spy on the girls getting changed. "I can see Donatella's pants," screamed Stuart Schmendrix, wobbling on top of Darren and peering over the wall. "ARRGGGHHH," shrieked the girls from their changing room, and I looked over at Bunky and gave him the signal. I was on the spying wall side of the room, doing my future Ratboy super high-speed pants into swimming trunks change, and Bunky was by the door. I counted down from 5 in my head and got ready to look like the most loser keel super loser ever. The most loser keel super loser ever. The elastic strap on Bunky's swimming goggles twanged as they shot out of his hands towards my face. As they flew across the room, I went through the plan in my head. 1. Get hit in the nose by Bunky's goggles. 2. Start spinning around, screaming like a loser. 3. Tangle myself up in the towel hanging on the hook next to me. 4. Stumble into the showers like a blind ghost. 5. Accidentally turn on the water and end up lying in a puddle, groaning. I smiled to myself, imagining everyone laughing at how loser keel I was. Then I realized I'd managed to do the whole list inside my head and a smile to myself, all with the goggles still not hitting my nose. I looked up and saw them shooting over the wall into the girls' changing rooms. "Faye babes! Watch out!" screamed Sharonella, then everything went quiet. I climbed up Darren Darrenofsky, then Stuart Schmendrix, and peered over the wall. Faye was lying in a puddle in the showers, tangled up in a towel like a blind ghost, groaning, with all the girls laughing at how loser keel she looked. "It's exactly like you planned it, except it all happened to Faye instead," whispered a mini Barry in my brain, and I tried to swivel my eyeballs all the way round and give him one of my looks. "Get your own loser keelness," I shouted, falling off Darren and Stuart and accidentally landing in the towel bin, which normally would have been really funny and loser keel, except everyone was too busy laughing at Faye. Nobody likes a show-off. "Work it, ladies," boomed an old wrinkled-up man in shiny shorts as I walked out to the swimming pool. His voice echoed off the water and bounced around the ginormous glass windows. He was dancing along the side of the pool, kicking his legs out and clapping his hands. The whole of his head was completely bald apart from a little gray beard that went all the way round his mouth, like a hairy donut. I looked into the water and saw now SH Granny Harumpadunk and her friends Ethel, Doreen and Three Thumb Rita from the sweet shop splashing about like they were being attacked by granny-eating sharks. "What in the keelness are they doing here?" whispered a mini Barry inside my brain. Then I saw a sign that said Aqua Aerobics for the elderly and I nodded my head, imagining the mini Barrys falling off their brain sofa again. "Cooey, Barari," warbled my granny, waggling her arms at me, and I was just about to pretend I didn't know who she was when I had one of my brilliant and amaze keel ideas. I glanced along the pool at everyone about to start their lesson and took a deep breath. "Guani!" I shouted, running up to the edge of the water and doing the most loser keel jump ever. "Yay!" I screamed, landing with a massive splosh. I opened my eyes underwater and saw Doreen's bum waggling in my face. "Granny bums!" I shouted as my head bobbed out of the water and floated there like a duck. I was in between Doreen and Ethel, who were panting and marching on the spot in super slow underwater granny motion. "Go on girls, burn those biscuits off," boomed the old man with the hairy donut beard, and joined in with the grannies, looking over to see if anyone was watching my loser keelness. And that was when I spotted Faye limping out of the changing rooms wearing the whiteboard, with an inflatable ring round her waist. She was shivering from the shower and her hair was all over her face. "Blimey, Snoggles, what happened to you?" chuckled Mr. Coops, walking by behind her copying her limp, and everyone laughed, some of the old grannies in my aqua aerobics class included. "That's not funny, this is," I shouted, splashing about, giggling and blowing off because of how hilarious and loser keel I looked. Mr. Coops walked up the side of the pool and stopped next to Donut Beard. I carried on stomping my feet in slow motion and waggling my arms in the air like Ethel. "Nobody likes a show-off, Barry," said Mr. Coops all quietly, not even smiling, and I slowed my slow-motion marching down until it completely stopped. Old granny legs. Mr. Coops made me sit at the side of the pool after that, so I found a seat and plunked my bum down on it, then looked to my right and did a massive blow-off out of shock. Sitting next to me was Mr. Hodgepodge, who used to be my teacher at school until he retired because he's about 300 years old. "What in the loserkeelness are you doing at Mobden Poo?" I said, then I remembered he was Granny Harumpadunk's boyfriend, which is probably the most loserkeel sentence in the history of sentences. Amen. "Just waiting to give your old gran a lift home," he said. "I see nothing's changed with you, Barry," he chuckled, giving me a nudge, and I remembered all the times he told me off at school. "It's Faye Snoggles," I said, pointing over at the pool. She was floating around in her inflatable ring, trying to catch the plastic goldfish hair clip, which had swum off like an actual fish. "She's completely copying my loserkeelness. Looks like Bunky's hair, and also a hand. I thought you didn't want to be a loser," Mr. Hodgepodge said, looking all confused, and I got my mini berries to roll my eyes for me from inside my head. "Loserkeelness is completely different from being a loser," I said, poking an old plaster on the floor with my big toe. "Not that plaster I was just talking about, but looks similar, so you get the idea." "Yes, well, isn't there an election for class captain coming up?" He smiled, nudging me again and waggling his eyebrows, and I remembered those posters that kept blowing past in the wind. "Maybe you should put yourself forward. There's nothing more loserish than being class captain, after all." "It's loserkeel, not loser/sh," I grunted, waggling my foot because the plaster had got stuck. "Cor, look at those legs," whispered one of the other old lady's husbands, tapping Hodge on the shoulder and nodding over at the grannies, who were doing underwater handstands now, waggling their feet in the air. "Ha ha, yes, very nice," mumbled Hodge, all embarrassed because of me, not that I cared. I swiveled my eyes over to Mr. Coops's lesson, mostly to get them away from all the old granny legs, but also to see what was happening. Nancy was synchronized swimming with Jocelyn, and Bunky was floating face down in the water pretending he drowned. "Barry! 5 minutes left. Come and do a dive," shouted Mr. Coops, and I zoomed off from Mr. Hodgepodge before he could say anything else about me being class captain, because there was no way that was ever going to happen. Amen. Mini Barry gulp. "Whatever you do, don't blow off," giggled Darren Darrenofsky, clambering up the ladder behind me to the middle diving board. I'd only ever done a dive off the lowest board before, and as I wobbled to the end and peered down, I heard one of my mini berries do a gulp. "The people look like ants from here," I said, copying what people say when they're high up. Then I zoomed my eyes in and realized what I was looking at was actual ants, swarming round that old plaster I was talking about earlier. "Come on, Barold," shouted Darren, and I reached my arm back and bonked him on the nose, because I hate it when people call me that. I millimetered my toes forwards and took a deep breath. "Go on, loser," shouted Mr. Hodgepodge from his seat, and the word loser echoed off the water and bounced around the ginormous glass windows. "Loser! Loser! Loser," chanted my whole class, and some of the old grannies too, so I smiled. Even though I'm not a loser, I'm the loserkeelest super loser ever. And that was when I fell forwards. "Wah wah!" I screamed, zooming towards the water nose first. You know when you're flying through the air like future Rat Boy, with everyone chanting loser at you, and you spot Face Snoggles floating right next to where you're about to land? That's what was happening to me. "Oh, my days," screamed Sharonella as I did an enormous splash in a massive wave headed towards Faye. She held onto her white plastic board and started surfing towards the old grannies. Run for your lives, ladies, screamed Donut Beard, and the old grannies started old granny sprinting away from Faye in super slow motion. This is the end, wailed Doreen as she disappeared under the wave, legs and arms and swimming caps with flowers on them flying all around. It took a few minutes for the water to go flat again and for Doreen to surface on the other side of the pool, her false teeth floating next to her. Faye had been swept all the way into the baby pool, which is about 1 millimeter deep. She was lying in it and rolling from side to side, her inflatable ring doing a super slow, extra loud blow-off as it deflaterized. That is so you, Faye, laughed Sharonella as I climbed out of the water, back to being the second most loser keel person in my class again. Future rat boy voice. Maybe you should run for class captain, smiled Nancy as we walked through the school gates the next morning, talking about Mr. Hodgepodge and what he'd said to me at Mobden Poo. Yeah, Barry, there's nothing more loser keel than being class captain, said Bunky, doing his class captain face, and I collapsed to the floor like a pyramid of whatever boxes being knocked over, weeing myself with laughter. Jocelyn ran up to us and stopped suddenly, his eyes as wide as Doreen's bum. I looked at his wrist for the worm bracelet from his whatever box, but it must have wriggled off because it wasn't there. Grubbage is coming, he screamed into my face, then zigzagged off like a poster in the wind. Grubbage is this loser keel person who goes round schools dressed up as a bin monster, teaching kids about recycling and saving the planet, and today he was coming to our school. Yes! Grubbage, whooped Bunky, punching the air and waggling his bum, and I imagined myself as class captain showing Grubbage round the school. Faye! Long time no see, shouted Sharonella, running past us, and I turned round and saw Faye Snoggles bouncing through the front gates without her loser keel whiteboard hanging round her neck. I don't know if it was being friends with Sharonella, or all the loser keel attention she'd been erly stealing off me, but something had changed about Faye. It was like she was turning into a super loser. Good morn, Keels, Sharonella, said Faye, and my ears nearly fell off. Her voice was still croaky from having a sore throat, plus it did a bit squeaky too. That voice. It sounds familiar, murmured Nancy, and I felt my knees go weak. Bunky, hold me, I'm about to fall. I gurgled, and my vision went blurry like that time when I was underwater in front of Doreen's bum. Oh my days, Faye. That is, like, the best future ratboy impression ever, giggled Sharonella as my legs gave way, and I collapsed to the floor like a pyramid of whatever boxes that had only just been stacked back up. Planet Dog Poo. Come along now, Kitty Winkles, shouted Miss Spivak as we walked into the classroom, me still a bit wobbly from my fall. As you all know, we have a very special guest today. Honk the class parrot was sitting on Miss Spivak's shoulder as per usual, and I wondered if parrots worried about things like being the loser-keelest parrot in their class. Very special guest, squawked Honk, sounding exactly like Miss Spivak, and I snort-led, even though I wasn't really in a snortling sort of mood. Play it Keel, loseroids. I whispered to myself in my best future ratboy voice, but it was nowhere near as loser keel as Faye's. Once everyone heard hers, she'd go straight to being the #1 loser-keelest person in the whole universe. I looked up at the big green board at the front of the classroom, where Miss Spivak had stuck all the recycling pictures we'd been doing that week. Anton Mildew's painting of a crumpled-up cereal box was in the middle, with the words PLEASSERECCYYCCLLE written round it in blue capitals. Next to that was my Amaze Keel felt-tip drawing of the Earth in the future if we carry on making so much rubbish. It was based on the episode of Future Ratboy when he goes to the planet Dog Poo, where it's completely impossible not to step in a pile of dog poo at least once every one step. At the bottom of the board was Faye's drawing of a machine that recycled Frankel cans into little robots that were sent out to walk around Mobden, picking up ring pulls. That's exactly the sort of loser keel thing you'd come up with, whispered a mini Barry in my head. And she does the best future ratboy impression ever, said another one, and I stuck my finger in my ear hole and gave it a waggle to shut him up. You've got to stop her, super loser, they shouted all together, and I was just about to nod them off their brain sofa when something behind the big green board started to growl. Pooh, what's that been smell? Shouted Gasper Pink right in my ear hole, and I turned round and saw his whole entire face go white. His eyes were staring past me and he looked as if he was standing on the end of a really high diving board, peering down at the water. Gee grubbage, he whisper-screamed, and I heard both of my mini berries do gulps. Grubbage. Standing at the front of the classroom was the most bin-smelling, pile of old socks-looking thing I've ever pointed my eyes and nose at. IMMGGGRRUBBAG, growled a voice from somewhere inside it, and everybody gasped. And I've come here today to talk to you about RRRUBBISH. Grubbage boomed, shaking himself like a dog, and bottle tops and ring pulls and screwed-up bits of paper fell out of his costume. He's got trainers on, shouted Darren Darrenofsky, pointing his chewed-up pencil at Grubbage's feet, and I spotted a pair of Fico's trainers underneath Grubbage's raggedy trouser legs. You, boyyy, roared Grubbage, pointing at Darren. Me, said Darren, pointing at himself with his chewed-up pencil. Come here, boomed the voice, and Darren got up and walked to the front all Darrenishly. I glanced out of the window and 107 saw another one of those posters saying you could be class captain, fly past, and I had one of the most brilliant and amaze-kill ideas I've ever had in the history of me being alive in this world, amen. What's your favorite fizzy drink, boy? Whisper-growled Grubbage, which is the easiest question to answer in the whole universe, because everyone knows Darren loves Frankel more than his own mom. Frankel, shouted the whole class, except me, because I was too busy getting ready to tell everyone my plan. Frankel, eh? That comes in cans, doesn't it? Said Grubbage, and one of his costume ears fell off. And what do you do with those cans once they're finished? He asked, as I started to stand up. Recycle them, screamed the whole class, and I opened my mouth in slow motion and started to speak. Captain Barry. Ladies and gentlekeels, I said, which is how future rat boy starts off all his speeches. Barry, what in the name of? Shouted Miss Spivak, but I put my hand up to stop her. My apologies, Madam Spivak, but this simply cannot wait, I said, sounding all Gordon Smuglyish and Bunky Snort-led. It is with great loserkeelness that I, Barry Superloser, the most loserkeel person in the history of loserkeelness, officially put my name forward for the job of class captain, I said, in my most future rat-boyish voice ever. He's gone completely stark raving bonkers, laughed Anton Mildew, and Gasper Pink took a photo. Probably for their unkeel newspaper, the Daily Pooh. I'm dreadfully sorry about this, Grubbage, said Miss Spivak, running over to him and slipping on a chewed-up pencil. Honk flew off her shoulder and onto Grubbage's head. Arg! Get this thing off of me, screamed Grubbage, bottle tops and ring pulls flying out of his costume. Grubbage! Grubbage, squawked Honk, pecking at Grubbage's real-life ear, which was sticking out of the hole where his costume one had fallen off. I looked over at Nancy, who was covering her eyes, then at Bunky, and he gave me a quadruple reverse twizzle salute. I tried to think what sort of things would make people vote for me. Then I remembered how much Darren likes Frankel. If elected class captain, I would make it the law that we had Frankel coming out of our taps instead of water, I said, feeling my loserkeelness getting stronger. YSSS, shouted Darren, dancing around Grubbage, who was flailing his arms about, screaming. Miss Spivak was lying on the floor, scrabbling around for her glasses. They should make glasses that can talk. Then I looked at Stuart Schmendricks, who was chewing on a thumb sweet, which are these Keel sweets that 3 Thumb Rita sells in her sweet shop. Also, all rubbers on the ends of pencils will be replaced with thumb sweets. I carried on, making it up on the spot. Whoop, whooped Stuart, and a bit of thumb sweet flew out of his mouth and landed on Tracy Pilchard's arm next to one of her 8 million bracelets. I pointed my mouth towards Tracy and opened it, waiting for the words to come out. Instead of maths, there will be a new class all about bracelets and necklaces and stuff like that, I said, and Tracy stopped doing a drawing of a dog and high-fived Donatella, and I saw Sharonella look a bit sad. "Somebody get this bird off me," shouted Grubbage. I felt sorry for him, but I couldn't stop. I had to become class captain before everyone heard Faye's future ratboy impression and she became the loserkeelest person in the whole universe. Thank you for listening to me this morning, ladies and gentlekeels, and remember, a vote for Barry is a vote for loserkeelness. I shouted, and shut my eyes and smiled. Which meant I didn't see Faye Snoggles standing up and walking over to Grubbage. "Captain Snoggles." "Here, Hunkapuz, here, Bertie," said Faye's voice, sounding exactly like future Ratboy when he talks to his sidekick, not Bird, and I stopped smiling and opened my eyes. She turned her head round and was showing Honk the plastic goldfish hair clip in her hair. Honk stopped pecking at Grubbage's ear and blinked. "What is it, Honk? Do you like Faye's goldfish?" whispered Miss Spivak, trying to stop him from eating Grubbage's ear. "Yes, it's shiny, isn't it?" she said. "Even though it isn't shiny at all, it's completely faded from living down a drain its whole life." Honk jumped off Grubbage's head and flew over to Faye, landing on her shoulder. "What a nightmare," said a voice from inside Grubbage's costume, and he ran out of the classroom leaving a trail of bin smell behind him. "I am so sorry, Grubbage," Miss Spivak called out as the door slammed, then she turned to me. "What has got into you, Barry?" she shouted. I looked out at the wind and saw Grubbage wobbling over to his car, yogurt pots and scrumpled up orange juice cartons flying out of his costume, and felt bad for ruining his day. But at least I was going to be class captain. "I'm sorry, Miss Spivak," I said, and Gasper Pink started to take another photo, so I turned towards him and did my loserkeelest smile. The camera flashed as Sharonella wobbled over to Faye. "Well, I know who I'll be voting for," she snort-led, stroking Honk's head. "Captain Snoggles." "Captain Snoggles," squawked Honk, pecking at the plastic goldfish in Faye's hair, and I did a blow-off out of complete annoyance. Not that you could tell, what with all the bin smell in the air. Having a wee. It was after school and I was in my toilet at home, having a wee. Bunky and Nancy were in my kitchen working out how I could beat Faye in the class captain elections, because now it was between me and her. What if he straps a can of Frankel onto each foot, so he's taller? "Everyone always votes for tall people," said Bunky, who thinks he's so cool, just because he's tall. I tried to wee faster, so I could get back in the kitchen and bonk him on the nose for having such a rubbish idea. Nancy was busy painting Fico's cereal boxes light blue and writing whatever on them in felt tip, not that I could tell because I was in the toilet, like just said. "Don't you think people vote for the person they reckon will do the best job as class captain?" she said, loud enough for me to hear. "Maybe you need to take it all a bit more seriously, talk about recycling and stuff like that?" I made a face to myself as I finished my wee, then waggled my fingers under the tap for 3 milliseconds and made another face, this time to my actual face, which was in the mirror on the wall above the sink. "Ooh, Nancy, you are a clever girl," said my mom, who was also in the kitchen by the way. "Oh, why don't you just swap me for Nancy if that's what you want?" I boomed, appearing at the kitchen door, holding my arms out all class captainly. Barry and Nancy action figures. My mum choosing Nancy. "Don't be silly, Snooky Flumps," said my mum, but I just ignored her and started pacing up and down the kitchen, trying to come up with one of my brilliant and amaze-keel ideas. Forget all that being serious unloser-keelness, we need to give people what they want. I said, thinking about Darren and his Frankel on tap, and Stuart with his thumb-sweet pencil rubbers. "What is there that everybody likes?" I asked. I darted my eyes around the kitchen, looking at all my mum's knickknacks, and they landed on the cereal box Nancy was painting. "That's IT!" I shouted, doing a jump like future Ratboy at the end of one of his episodes, and I hit my head on the kitchen light like a complete and utter super loser. Berry boxes. "What's it?" snort-led Bunky, and my mum ran over and gave my head a hug, which I squirmed out of straight away, even though she was holding on really tightly. "Well, you know how much everyone loves whatever boxes?" I said, pointing at the one Nancy was painting. "Yeah," they all yelled, splitting their yes into two bits, my mum included. "How about we turn them into berry boxes? Except, instead of selling them, we give them away." "Give them away? What's the point of that?" said my mum, flicking on the kettle, and I wondered if she had any friends of her own she could go and play with. "The point, Motheringtons, is that we only give someone a berry box if they promise to vote for me in the election," I said, doing my two for the price of one class captain grin and wink, waiting to hear the applause. "Nice plan, Barold, but we only have 3 whatever boxes left," said Nancy, one off and putting it next to finishing one the other 2 on the kitchen table. I scratched my bum, trying to think where I could get more cardboard boxes. Can I have some more cereal boxes, please?" I said in my baby berry voice, and Nancy pretended to be sick all over Bunky. "You've used them all already." "Snooky flumps," said my mum, opening the cereal cupboard, and a trillion loose cornflakes poured out all over her feet. "You know how I just hit my head on the kitchen light?" I was still standing underneath it, and the bulb flickered like in a cartoon when someone comes up with an amazing idea. "What about the money we made from selling whatever boxes? We could buy more boxes with that," I screamed, and I was just about to run upstairs and grab the plastic ice cream tub full of coins from under my bed when Nancy opened her mouth. "No, you can't use that." I was saving up for a new, Nancy did her face she does when she's trying to make something up. She grabbed my mum's shopping catalog that's always lying open on the kitchen table and pointed at a photo of a sun lounger. "I was saving up for a new sun lounger," she said, holding up the catalog. "Okay," I said, which is how future rat boy says okay when he doesn't believe someone but can't be bothered to find out what's going on. I thought of the ice cream tub full of coins, and how I could maybe just borrow a few of them for a couple of days. "Don't worry, I'll come up with something," I said, and I hoped Nancy couldn't tell what I was thinking. Mr. Fico's beard flakes. It was still dark as I snuck out of my house and skateboarded to Fico's supermarket the next morning. I patted my pocket, hearing the coins jangle, and thought about the empty ice cream tub under my bed. "You're only borrowing the money," whispered a mini berry in my head as I skateboarded into Fico's and went straight to the cereal aisle, looking for the cheapest boxes I could find. "They're all so expensive," moaned another mini berry, and I felt like my dad, who's always going on about how much stuff is. At the end of the aisle was a massive sign with "Somebody please buy these" written on it in big red capitals. "Somebody please buy these." Underneath the sign was a pyramid of Mr. Fico's beard flakes boxes. Superloser zoomed my eyes in and saw a cardboard cutout of Mr. Fico, the billionaire owner of Fico's supermarkets, standing next to all the boxes. He was holding a bowl of beard flakes and smiling out from a beard that went all the way round his mouth, just like the old man from Mobbed Pooh. "Hi, I'm Mr. Fico, somebody please buy my beard flakes." I walked over and picked up a box. "Free stick-on beard in every pack," said a bright red sticker, and I imagined myself with a donut beard, looking exactly like class captain. "Would you like to try one?" asked an old granny in a Fico's uniform, and I did a blow-off out of shock, because I hadn't seen her sneak up. She was wearing a name badge that said Pearl and had a mole on the end of her nose that made her look like future rat boy's mum. Pearl held out a bowl of beard flakes and picked one up and popped it on my tongue like it was a flattened-out bogey. "You're high yuck," I blurted, pretending to be sick all over Bunky, even though he wasn't there. "Disgusting, aren't they?" chuckled Pearl. I looked at the price and the sticker saying "free stick-on beard in every pack," and I smiled. "I'll take 30, I said, reaching into my pocket for the coins, and Pearl did an old granny blow-off out of shock. "May the keelest loser win." I felt a bit like an old granny myself, waddling through the school gates with my 8 million Ficos carrier bags filled with boxes of beard flakes. Nancy was over by the table tennis table, stacking the last 3 whatever up, roll boxes into a mini pyramid. "Roll up, get your whatever boxes here," she shouted as I walked towards her. "Mornkeels," I said, putting my bags down and lifting out a box of beard flakes. I opened the lid and poured the flakes into my rucksack and heard a really light thud, which was actually more like a thud than a thud, not that I cared, because lying among the flakes was my free stick-on beard. Free stick-on beard. What in the loserkeelness is going on here?" said Nancy, peering over my shoulder. "Where did you get those?" "Oh yeah, I borrowed some money off my mum," I lied, sticking the beard onto my face. "How do I look?" "Like a complete idiot," said Nancy, doing one of her half-smiles. "Have got the ice cream tub, by the way?" I put my hand in my pocket and felt the last coin left from all the money I'd stolen. It was that dirty, bent in half on Jocelyn Twiggs had bought worm box with the other day. "About that," I said, trying to think of something to say. "I've been so busy what with the election and everything, I completely forgot to bring it," I smiled, emptying more beard flakes into my rucksack and fishing around for the beards. Well, bring it in tomorrow," said Nancy, doing a look like she didn't trust me at all times. A million amen. A poster saying election tomorrow flew past my eyes and Sharonella and Faye appeared from behind it, as if by annoying magic. "Good morn, Keels, Barold," said Sharonella. "What's all this craziness? Not that I even care." She snorted, pointing at my beard. "It's how I'm gonna win the election," I said, popping a stick-on beard back into one of the emptied-out boxes. I grabbed a pen from my pencil case and crossed out beard flakes, writing "Berry Loser" above it. "A free berry box for every vote." I smiled, starting a pyramid of my own. "Loserkeelness times a millikeels," said Faye in her perfect future ratboy voice, and I fake smiled, pretending it didn't make me really jealous. Sharonella pulled a little pad out of her back pocket. "Interestring," she mumbled, jotting something down. "May the keelest loser win, that's what I say," she smiled, and then she waddled off, Faye following behind. The donut beards. "What's happened keeling, loseroids," said Bunky walking over, looking about a Frankel taller. My eyes swiveled down and saw 2 cans of Frankel strapped to his feet. I picked up a box and passed it to him. "Vote for Barry," I said, and he opened it up, pulling out a fake beard. "It's like that old man's donut one at Mobden Poo," laughed Bunky, sticking it onto his face, and we high-fived like 2 old men with beards, one of them with Frankel cans strapped to his feet. "Me and Bunky when we're old." Nancy sighed, or it could have been the wind. "Barry's mum was kind enough to buy him all these cereal boxes," she said, kicking one of my carrier bags. "Oh, and he forgot to bring in the ice cream tub. You know, the one with all of our money in it?" I peeked at Nancy, who was doing that look I was talking about when she doesn't trust me at all times. A million amen. Then I looked at Bunky, who was standing there like a dog trying to work out what was going on between its 2 owners. "Dazoid," shouted, because Darren S. walking past slurping on a Frankel, plus wanted to distract Bunky. "Have a beard. 1 free with every vote." Darren wobbled over and picked up a box. "Don't mind if I do," he said, slapping it onto his mouth and taking another slurp. Harry Frankel, how refreshapus," he burped, and Nancy covered her nose. I smiled to myself, thinking how well my idea was working out. Then I remembered the empty ice cream tub underneath my bed, and stopped smiling. "How could you steal from your best friends?" whispered a mini Barry from his brain sofa, and I shook my head to myself, feeling like a naughty little super loser. "Nancy, what about you?" said Bunky, waggling his beard and passing her a box. "Vote for Barry?" I'm still deciding, said Nancy, giving me her look again, and I hoped she couldn't hear my mini berry. The white boards. When the bell went, I took down my pyramid of boxes and headed into class, smiling in the middle of my donut beard because our first lesson was art, which is one of my lead and utter favorites. As soon as I walked through the door, I spotted Sharonella and Faye sitting in the corner with a big pile of white cardboard, both of them holding scissors. What's all this unloserkeelness? Said, walking the long way round to my desk so I could have a look. You'll see, snort-led Sharonella, cutting a rectangle of cardboard and making 2 holes at the top. She snipped a bit of string off a bundle on the floor and threaded it through the holes. I sat down at my desk and thought about what to draw. Outside the wind was blowing, and I super-loser zoomed my eyes in, trying to work out what wind actually looks like. And that's when I heard Sharonella's voice. Roll up, get your white bards over here, she shouted, holding one of the cardboard rectangles above her head. Free whiteboard with every vote for Faye. I couldn't believe my ears, which by the way had just gone completely red out of annoyance. Sharonella and Faye had totally copied my idea. Shush, Sharonella, shushed Miss Spivak, and Honk flew off her shoulder and out the door because he's scared of the SH sound, which must be pretty difficult for Miss Spivak seeing as she's got a really loud and annoying Sharonella in her class. Honk you poos. Come to Mama, she warbled, running out the door after him. Jocelyn's chair screeched out from under his desk and he ran round to Sharonella. Ooh, me, he squeaked, picking a whiteboard up and putting it round his neck. Sharonella grabbed a pencil and wrote vote for FAY, in massive capitals, right across the board. My ears went even redder and I imagined my mini berries sweating on their brain sofa. That's completely copying my loserkeelness. I screamed, my donut beard half falling off. Not getting too annoyed. She did the same thing with our dog drawings, moaned Donatella, holding up her sheet, which was full of drawings of dogs, and Tracy nodded, holding hers up too. Stuart! I shouted, and Stuart Schmendricks jumped. Put this donut beard on immediately, I said, fishing one out of a box and throwing it over Nancy's head. Like a hairy halo. Nancy turned round and looked up at me, the way my mum does when I'm being naughty. I looked at her piece of paper and saw a drawing of the Fico's ice cream tub, with me dressed as a burglar standing next to it. Stuart took the beard and held it up to his face, not sure if he wanted to put it on or not. Darren! I shouted, and Darren reached across and squashed the beard onto Stuart's lips. We are the donut beards. I boomed, and Bunky stood up to do a salute and fell over straight away, probably because of his stupid Frankel feet. Barry loser, will you sit down now, screamed Miss Spivak, coming back in with Honk on her shoulder. I sat back down, picked my pencil up and started to draw the wind, my hands shaking. I tried to think of something nice that would calm me down a bit, and remembered it was my birthday coming up. Last year's cake, only one are in pack. I smiled to myself and thought of the future Ratboy trainers LD asked my mom and dad for, and felt my radiator ears start to cool down. Pissed. Sharonella, whispered Anton, who was sitting next to her and Faye. Can I have a couple? He said, and Sharonella passed 2 white bards down to him and Gasper, and another one for Anton's invisible friend, Invis, not that he hangs out with him much anymore. Vote for Faye. I pressed my pencil down and the point snapped from how shaky my hand was. It flew across the desk and landed on Nancy's drawing of me as a burglar, making a little V shape above my eyes, like I had evil eyebrows. Not like my nose at all. Pencil lead. Burglar outfit. Can you believe Sharonella? I whispered to Nancy, my voice all wobbling like the voice of a jelly, if jellies could talk, which they so can't. My voice. Nancy, doing a brand new look I'd never seen before, where she doesn't trust me at all times a zillion amen, and I felt my mini berries turning up my radiator ears. Lord Donut. After that it was lunch. While my main donut beard followers Darren, Stuart and Bunky gave out a few more donut beards, I watched Sharonella and Faye going round the playground hanging white bards round people's necks. Then the bell went and we all got into the coach and headed off on a trip to the recycling center. Grubbage was supposed to meet us here, said Miss Spivak after we'd parked and got off the bus in the corner of Fico's car park, but he called this morning and said he had a particularly bad case of ziditis, whatever that is. I snort lead to myself, because ziditis is this made-up disease I pretend to have whenever I want to get out of something. Been snoring ZS all night. Stuck under them. Oh, groaned everyone, because we all wanted to see Grubbage again, but maybe not smell him. Then we trudged over to the huge green metal recycling bins with the holes in their sides. Barry, take this stuff, said Miss Spivak, passing me a massive box full of plastic bottles, and I wished I had Frankel cans strapped to my feet so I could reach the holes. Darren, you're in charge of glass. Now who can give the paper to? Ah yes, Faye and Sharonella, shouted Miss Spivak, and Honk flew off her shoulder, probably because of the SH sound. I glanced over at Sharonella and Faye and all their loserish followers stuffing sheets of paper into the bins, and I imagined myself posting all their stupid white bards in there too. Darren had lined up 10 green bottles and was standing in front of a bin, throwing them at the holes. Smash! Broke the first one, hitting the side and exploding into a million bits. A shard of glass whooshed past Nancy's face, and she gave me one of her looks, even though it wasn't me who'd done it, it was Darren, like I just said. Darren Darrenovsky, screeched Miss Spivak, or it could have been Honk, who was pecking around on the floor for crumbs. Stop that now. Darren turned to me and smiled inside his beard. What do I do, boss? He said, holding up another bottle. Yeah, Barry, can we throw them or what? Giggled Stuart, and a few more donut beards walked over too. Tell us what to do, Lord Donut, smiled Bunky, picking up a plastic bottle and aiming it at a hole. Nancy appeared next to me with her last whatever box under her arm. Tell them to stop it, Barry, she said. That last one almost hit me. Helpapuz, that last one almost hit me, baby-voiced Stuart Schmendricks, wobbling up and grabbing the whatever box out from under Nancy's arm. He ran over to the cardboard bin and held it up to the hole. Shall I put it in? He laughed, his donut beard hanging off his face. Give it back, Stuart, screamed Nancy, running after him, and he waggled the box up in the air. Tell us what to do, Lord Donut, shouted the donut beards all together, and I scratched my bum, wondering what I should say. You have to give your voters what they want, whispered a mini Barry in my head, and the wind blew, ruffling the hairs in my beard. Do it, I said, turning round so I didn't have to see. After that last bit. It's only a cardboard box, you can have one of my spare ones. I said, tapping Nancy on the shoulder as we arrived back at school, but she just shrugged and walked off. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow then. Don't forget it's my birthday next week. I shouted, and she disappeared round the corner, leaving me with all the donut beards. What now, Lord Donut? Said Darren, everyone standing behind him waiting for me to give them their next order. Get a good night's sleep, I said, all class captainly. And remember to vote for me tomorrow. The donut beards walked off and me and Bunky headed home, him wobbling along on his Frankel feet. So, what have you got me for my birthday? I said, because we always get each other birthday presents. Bunky opened his mouth as if he was about to say something, then changed his mind and shut it, then opened it again. Oh, right, so it's your birthday is it? He said, all weirdly. I completely and utterly forgot about that. Honest I did. Are you gonna have a party? Yes, said, which is how future rat boy says yes when he up to something but thinks someone's can't be bothered to find out what's going on. We talked about my birthday party until we got to the top of my road, which is where I go my way and he goes his. Biggest day in the history of days ever to Motsoid. I said, giving him a salute, and he quadruple twizzle saluted back. See you to Motsoid, Lord Donut, shouted Bunky. Oh. Yes. And don't forget the ice cream tub. Me if was a coin. Worried about empty ice cream tub. To Motsoid. Before you could say tomorrow, it was the next day and I was walking back. To the top of my road, this time from the other direction. You saying tomorrow. 2 more. Ruu. Mornkeels, said Bunky, still with the Frankel cans on his feet. He stuck his donut beard on and I gave him a little salute. Where's that ice cream tub I was talking about? Oh yeah, about that. I said, trying to think of a lie. You would not believe how busy I've been, what with the election and everything, you know, I completely forgot to bring it, I smiled, heading off for school. That's okay, just go back and get it, said Bunky all weirdly, pointing at my house, which was about 3 meters away. I would love to, Bunky Puss, really I would, but I just have to get to school, I said, and I carried on walking, hoping that was that. But, said Bunky, and I turned round to face him. Lord Donut says no. I screamed, and Bunky jumped, falling off his Frankel cans. I helped him up and we walked to school, not saying much at all. Amen. The loser keelist super loser. The donut beards were waiting for me at the school gates when we got there, chanting loser over and over again, which is a weird thing to hear when what you really want is to be the winner. Good luck, Barry, said the future V-rap-waist voice ever, and I turned round and saw Faye standing there, reaching out her hand. May the loser keelist super loser win, said, shaking hands, and Gasper took a photo. Vote time, screeched Honk over the loudspeaker, and we all ran into the classroom and started queuing up by the big board, which still stank a bit of bins, thank to grubbage from the other day. Asterisk smallest thank ever. The vote. Voting was the easiest thing ever. Amen. All you had to do was go behind the board and write who you were voting for on a piece of paper and slot it into a little box, and that was it. So the pencil can't escape. I tried to count how many donut beards there were compared to white bards, but I kept getting confused because of everyone walking around, so in the end I gave up and sat down, crossing all my fingers and toes. That's everyone, said Miss Spivak once we'd all voted apart from Nancy. Apart from Nancy Verkenwerken. I looked around the classroom and spotted Nancy at the back, working on a new design for whatever boxes in her sketchbook. I'm not voting, she said, without looking up. Come on, Nancy. I smiled, pretending I'd forgotten about her being in a mood with me, but she just carried on scribbling. In that case it's lunchtime, said Miss Spivak, and we all ran out into the playground, apart from Nancy. End. Only joking. Lunch breath. I can't remember what I had for my packed lunch, but before I knew it was back in the classroom sitting in my seat, with my breath smelling of cheese and pickle sandwiches, a tangerine, 2 Ficos chocolate digestives and a can of caffeine-free diet cherry Frankel. I have some very interesting news, Kitty Winkles, said Miss Spivak, holding a sheet of paper in her hands. Honk and I counted the votes up over lunch. And it seems we have a tie. I glanced over at Faye, wondering if we should have been best friends instead of enemies, seeing as we're exactly as loser keel as each other. Then I thought how she'd completely copied my loserkeelness, and I went back to thinking she was the most annoying loseroid ever. Me thinking we could be friends. Me thinking she's really annoying. OMG, miss, we should seriously flip a coin, cried Sharonella, standing up. Good idea, Sharonella. Does anyone have a coin? Said Miss Spivak. Honk flying off her shoulder, and 1x3 remembered I still had one left overdue from when I bought my beard flakes. I've got one, I said, putting my hand in my pocket and pulling out the dirtiest, Ben 10 halfest coin ever. Heads! I called, flipping it into the air. And that's when it happened. The winner. That coin. It looks familiar, murmured Nancy from the back of the classroom. The coin paused in midair like future Rat Boy at the end of one of his episodes, except more coin-like. Where did you get that? Said Nancy, walking over and standing right in front of me. Totally not moving. She stuck her hand out and the coin landed in her palm. The Fico's carrier bags with my leftover berry boxes were under my desk, and she kicked one, making it rustle. Your mum didn't lend you any money, did she? Said Nancy. This is Jocelyn's coin. I remember him buying a whatever box with it. I put it in the ice cream tub with all the other coins. Then you stole them and bought those beard flakes, didn't you? She said, all in one go. Acting all innocent. Outside, the wind had stopped. I waited for a mini berry to whisper something in my ear, but nothing happened. I looked over at Bunky, hoping Hemer wouldn't believe it. His face was like a dog's when its owner's being horrible. How could you, Barry? He shouted, ripping off his donut beard and throwing it at my feet. We were saving up to buy you a future Rat Boy costume with it too. I remembered Bunky being all weirdle about my birthday, and Nancy when she said she was saving up for a sun lounger. But I mumbled, but there was nothing left to say. Miss Spivak came over and peered into Nancy's hand. Heads it is. Congratulations, Barry, looks like you're the winner, she smiled. The word winner floated into my ear hole and echoed round my brain, and I thought back to how this all started, with me thinking I was such a super loser. I'm sorry, Nancy. I'm sorry, Bunky, I whispered, looking down at the floor. You're not sorry for anything, said Nancy, dropping the coin onto Bunky's donut beard and walking away. You got exactly what you wanted, Barry winner. Barry winner. Lip wobble. It was lonely walking home all on my own with no Bunky or Nancy to talk to, and no mini berries sitting on their brain sofa telling me what to do. Laven missed the wind, which had stopped blowing, and I felt my bottom lip start to wobble as I trudged down my road. What no wind looks like. What's wrong with my little Snooky Flumps? Warbled my mum as she opened the front door, and fell into her, like a pyramid of berry boxes collapsing in the no wind. Onion tears. Barry Gary Larry loser, what did get into you? Said my mum after I told her everything, and I knew I'd been bad, because she only uses my middle names when I'm a very naughty bearapuz. I'm sorry, Mumsy, I said in my baby Barry voice, and my mum pretended to be sick all over Bunky, even though he wasn't there, because he hates me. It's Nancy and Bunky you need to apologize to, she said, chopping up an onion and crying from the fumes, and I leaned over to get some of them into my eyes. I imagined my mini berries turning little taps on behind my eyeballs, then remembered they were gone. I don't think Nancy and Bunky like me anymore, I cried, leaning against my mum's leg, and she stroked my hair like I was her pet cat. What if they don't want to come to my birthday as well? I bawled, and I imagined my party without Bunky and Nancy there and came up with a kind of loserish but sort of alright plan right there and then on the spot, amen. Again. Grubberry. My kind of loserish but sort of alright plan was this. 1. Cancel my birthday party as a tell-off to myself for being such a naughty bearapuz. 2. Go into school and tell everyone, looking all sad. 3. Wait for Nancy and Bunky to feel really sorry for me. 4. Let them forgive me for stealing all their money. 5. Go back to my normal loser keel life. I was so excited I didn't even brush my teeth on Monday morning, so breath smelt like grubbage as I skateboarded to school all alone. My no-donut beard non-waggled in the no-wind, and I smiled to myself, imagining Nancy and Bunky being my best friends again. Here he comes. Captain Loser, burped Darren Darrenofsky in his donut beard as I walked into the classroom. Please, loser fans, don't stand up, I said, keeping him and all the other donut beards happy, even though donut beards are comprly over. Nancy and Bunky were sitting in their seats, staring out of the window at the no wind, not that you can see something that isn't even there. Mornkeels, I said, sitting down next to them, but they just ignored me. Did you hear the news? Nancy opened her sketchbook and started drawing a whatever box, and Bunky pretended he was thinking about something, even though I know for a fact he never thinks about anything. Inside Bunky's head. My birthday party's been cancelled because of how much of a naughty berry I was, I said, doing my extra sad face, where my nose droops down. That face I was just talking about. I stuck my bottom lip out and made it wobble, waiting for them to feel sorry for me and forgive me. Your breath stinks like grubbage, said Nancy, doing her face she does when she doesn't like me at all times. A million amen. Grubbage breath. I shut my mouth and sat there feeling like a complete loser. Yeah, Grubberry, I can totally smell your breath from over here, snortled Sharonella, and everyone laughed apart from me, because it's really hard to laugh when your bottom lip is actually real-life wobbling. Verbunkin not loser. I spent the rest of the morning doing my lessons all normally, apart from the fact I didn't have my best friends to talk to. Just fancy a little chat. Captain Loser, there's a meeting at lunchtime for teachers and all class captains regarding the layout of the new car park. It shouldn't take more than an hour, said Miss Spivak halfway through maths, which is definitely the most boring sentence ever said. I thought about sighing, then changed my mind and did a blow-off instead. Wishing I'd never started this whole class captain thing in the first place, seeing as it had completely ruined my life. Then it was lunchtime and I trudged up the stairs to the staff room with Miss Spivak, talking about how well the new brooms have been working, because that's what you do when you're class captain. How are you enjoying the job, Captain Loser? Asked Mr. Coops after we'd talked about the car park for about 9 hours, and I fake smiled, glancing out of the window at all the other kids running around in the playground being happy. Hanging on the brick wall behind the table tennis table was a big poster with the words Verbunkenloser Ltd written on it, except the loser bit had been rubbed off, a bit like the L in Mobden Pooh. Don't know who this is. I zoomed my eyes in and saw Nancy and Bunky standing round the table, selling their new design whatever boxes. My kind of loserish but sort of alright plan had failed, and now I was all alone for the rest of my life, amen. Don't be so unkeel, super loser. You just have to come up with one of your brilliant and Ezekiel plans, said a voice inside my head, and I didn't know if it was a mini berry or just me thinking it, but either way I'd had enough of my stupid plans. This is a job for Barry Loser, I whispered to myself, and Mr. Coops looked at me like I was going mad. Happy birth Keel. Happy birthday, Snooky Flumps, said my mum 2 mornings later as I left for school, and she handed me a little box of Fico's raisins for my present. I'm so proud of you, she called out, and I popped a couple of raisins into my mouth for good luck. Happy birth Keel to you. I heard as I skateboarded up to the school gates 10 minutes later, and I felt my heart start to beat. I was sure no one had remembered it was my birthday today, what with them all hating me and everything. Then I turned round the corner and saw Faye being given the bumps. Everyone was standing around her, singing the happy birthday tune, and I rolled my eyes and did a little snortle. Tippy Keel. You and Faye have exactly the same birthday, laughed a mini berry, or maybe it was just me thinking it. Happy birth Keel Fay, I said, going up to her after the bumps had finished. Not that I actually said it out loud. What with all the talking I'd been doing in my class captain meetings, I'd got a sore throat, so I'd scribbled it onto the white plastic board thingy that was hanging round my neck. Hey, that's the sort of loser Keel thing I do, she said, and I reached into my rucksack and pulled out a cardboard box. Have a beard flake, I wrote on my board, and she stuck her hand in and put a flake onto her tongue. EURRGGGHHHYYUCK, she screamed, spitting it out all over Bunky, who'd appeared next to her with Nancy. Actually, they're not bad, she laughed, and I gave her the whole pack. I reached into my rucksack again and pulled out a big wrapping papered box with red ribbon round it. This is for you too, I wrote, handing over the box, and Nancy took it without smiling. Everything paused, like at the end of a future Rat Boy episode. I couldn't hear a thing, not even the wind. Loser boy. Maybe you should open it, said Faye in her future Rat Boy voice, and I popped a raisin into my mouth, waiting to see what they'd do. Going into my belly. Only because it's your birthday, said Nancy, and Bunky grabbed the present and ripped off the paper. Our empty Fico's ice cream tub, he said, his nose drooping. The one you stole all the money out of. Disappointed nose. TADA. I wrote on my whiteboard in ginormous letters, and I lifted the lid off the box. Inside were 4 notes, enough to buy a pair of future Rat Boy trainers for my birthday present, except I told my mum to put the money in the ice cream box for me to give back to Nancy and Bunky instead. Our money, said Bunky, pulling out a big green note. Captain Loser, you're late for your meeting, shouted Miss Spivak across the playground, and I started to walk towards the staff room. Barry, I heard, and I hoped it wasn't a mini Barry whispering in my head. Yeah. I said in my head, because I couldn't speak thanks to my sore throat, and I turned round, crossing all my fingers and toes, which is hard to do when you're in the middle of turning round. Happy birth Keel, cried Nancy and Bunky, and Faye too. They handed me a yellow whatever box, which is the new color for whatever boxes these days in case you didn't know. For me? I scribbled, taking the box, and a crowd started to gather around, including Sharonella, Donatella and Tracy, who I think might have made friends and started drawing cats instead, seeing as they all had biro cat tattoos on their bracelet arms. Open it, squawked Honk, who was sitting on Miss Spivak's shoulder as per usual. I slid my finger along the top of the box and flipped the lid, putting my hand inside, and lifted out the smelliest looking, most faded ever plastic L I'd seen in my entire life on this planet. Amen. Something familiar about it. I found it down a drain near Mobden Poo, said Bunky, and I looked at the L and realized what it was. The one from the Mobden Poo sign that had disappeared 8 million years ago. Keelness. I scribbled on my whiteboard, and I held the L in front of my chest. Exactly where future Rat Boy has his R, and cleared my sore throat. Bit bigger than future Rat Boys are. Loser boy to the rescue. I squeaked, jumping in the air like future Rat Boy at the end of his TV show, and Honk flew off Miss Spivak's shoulder and did a poo right on Faye's goldfish hair clip, which is probably the loser-keelest thing that has ever happened in the history of the universe. Amen. And for some reason I TRLY didn't care. Not the end. LS really. About the page number. Jim Smith is the keelest kid's book page number in the whole wide world. Amen. He graduated from art school with first-class honors, the best you can get, and went on to create the branding for a sweet little chain of coffee shops. He also designs cards and gifts under the name Waldo Pancake. Page numbering is my real passion, says Jim, numbering a page and chuckling to himself. There's nothing I hate more than a page that isn't numbered. In my room. Ever since I started collecting future Rat Boy action figures, my dad keeps coming into my room and looking at them, then doing a little laugh to himself and shaking his head and walking out again.